You know, it's impossible to adequately explain virtual reality to anyone who hasn't tried it. Watching this footage on the screen simply doesn't do it justice. So I'll say again, if you haven't tried VR yet, do it. So many who have tried VR have complained that the experiences are far too short. They say that they aren't games, but really just experiences or even just tech demos. Robinson the Journey is the most complete game I've played on the PSVR. Now, while I won't be giving a score at the end of my reviews, I do want to take the time to discuss each aspect of the games that happens to be pertinent to the specific game. So for Robinson, we're going to be looking at story, graphics, sound, controls, and then at the end I'll give some final thoughts. But let's get right into the story. It's really nothing groundbreaking, but it does the job. The game opens sometime after you've crash landed on Tyson 3, and you play as Robin, a young boy who, by the time you take control, has some things figured out. He's set up a home with security in place, he has a farm for growing food, and he has some non-human companions. The first one that you meet is Higgs. Now, Higgs is Robin's robot companion. He serves to guide as safely as possible through your journey on Tyson 3. And one of the things that Higgs does is he kind of helps you out with puzzles. He'll point some things out, kind of guide you in the right direction, which is really helpful because there's some of the puzzles that aren't really as straightforward as you might want them to be, or they don't make as much sense as you think they would. And so sometimes you do need a little hint, and Higgs is there to do just that. Laika is a baby T-Rex that Robin has found and made his pet. And she helps with some of the puzzles. There's a few times where Higgs will make the comment, hey, you need to startle this animal to get them out of the way so you can finish solving this puzzle. Well, how do you startle that animal? Well, you call your pet baby T-Rex over and you tell her to roar, and she roars, and it's not a full-fledged, full-throated T-Rex roar. It's just a little baby T-Rex roar, but it's enough to scare the animals out of the way and give them a little fright so you can go on about solving the puzzle. And so having Laika there is really neat. You can play hide and seek with her and some other things, and really the first time you see her, and if you haven't experienced VR before, you kind of get freaked out a little bit by things being in your face, even if it's a small animal. There's a lot of the VR games where you'll turn around and something's right there, and even though it's not meant to be scary, it's just a little freaky at first because it does feel like you're actually in that world. And so Laika and Higgs kind of help you not feel so lonely because you are, as far as you know, the lone survivor of this crash. And so having those companions really helps out and kind of moves the story along as you go. Now, I don't want to spoil anything as far as some of the big moments in the story, but I will say it's interesting. It's interesting enough. And one of the things that you have to do is find different Higgs units from other crews that were also on the same colonization vessel that you were traveling on, called the Esmeralda. And one of the things that you do when you find these Higgs units, you scan the units and you download the different logs from the crew members, and some of them from the units themselves. And these audio files clue you in as to what happened when all of you crashed and plans changed. And so a lot of the story plays out listening to these different files from the Higgs units. Now later in the game, there's an entirely different experience. There's a stealth section where you're trying to accomplish a task while trying not to be eaten by velociraptors. Think of the kitchen scene in the first Jurassic Park movie. That's about the best way I can describe it. All I can say is it's tense beyond anything I've ever done. Overall, the story is very entertaining, but the main attraction is simply the experience of being in the world with the dinosaurs. Now, the graphics, I have to say, this is the most beautiful PlayStation VR game I've played. I was in awe from the first time I stepped out into the world of Tyson 3. There's so many things that made me pause and just enjoy the wonder that is VR technology. I've already mentioned the thrill of being in the same space, in the same world with the dinosaurs. And coming face to face with the raptors, I mean, I cringed and closed my eyes when I was discovered. I was trying to sneak around so they couldn't see me, but when I made a sound or when I rounded a corner and there was one already standing there and he darted toward me, and the game doesn't show you being eaten by a raptor. It just kind of goes to a dark screen and it kind of resets you. But still, seeing that thing run at you and it's in your face, and it just makes you cringe and flinch, and it's a crazy feeling. Everything about Tyson 3 is real enough to make you feel like you're actually there in the world. A big part of that, a big part of what makes you feel like you're actually in the world, is the sound. And the sound design in this game is amazing. It plays a major part of the immersion, and as it would in any VR title, but in Robinson, it's awesome. Now the controls are something a little bit different than most VR games. This is not really necessarily a category that you would normally even discuss in a game review these days, because most control schemes have been pretty much standardized long ago. But VR, the controls in VR are important because it plays a big part in how you feel while you're in the world. The reason that most VR games don't give you complete control is that most developers are still trying to figure out how to keep people from getting sick. And the easiest way to do this is to keep the player stationary and let them experience the world around them. The best way to keep from having that motion sickness is not to have a lot of motion. But VR games that give you more control over your movement, they have to employ certain techniques to cut down on the motion sickness. And Robinson the Journey is the first VR game that I've played that gives you this much control over your movement in an open space. See, one of the tricks that developers can use to cut down on the nausea is to have something static on the screen at all times. Think the cockpit of a spaceship or a mech. As long as you have something in front of you that doesn't move, you're less likely to feel the disconnect between what your eyes are telling your brain and what your body is actually experiencing. Robinson has various control options and allows you to choose what's the most comfortable, meaning least nauseating, for you. Now, I chose the control scheme that allows me the most fluid and free movement. It's basically a first-person shooter controls with the ability to look around with the headset. Now, there's a lot of other choices for the control scheme, and they encourage you to figure out which one's going to work best for you. Now, I do have some, I guess, final thoughts, or to summarize. There's a lot of others that have said, and I tend to agree, that Robinson the Journey feels like you're playing through the middle chapter of a larger saga. And I could see that. There's a lot of backstory that you find out throughout the course of the game, and you kind of get the sense that the entire story is much bigger than the part you're playing through. And that's fine. The part that you play through is really good, so it's not that takes away from it. It's just something that you realize that there's a lot more that has gone on and that will go on. I also have to admit that right now, everything I play in VR is awesome to me, and I'm one of the lucky ones that hasn't gotten sick in any VR game that I've played. Now, I realize that's not the case with most people. There are a lot of people that have trouble with it, but I've been lucky so far, and every game I've played has been awesome. I will say that this is by far the most complete game experience that I've had on PlayStation VR. It plays great, looks amazing. And it's been noted that the game will look even better on the PS4 Pro, which kind of hurts my heart because I can't afford a PS4 Pro right now because I just bought the VR. But I would love to see the difference. I would love to see this game look even better than it already does. Robinson the Journey will allow you to fulfill your dreams of walking with dinosaurs. These are the types of experiences VR is made for. Now let's get to work on that open world Jurassic Park game. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to watch the video and listen to me ramble on for a few minutes about Robinson the Journey. I hope you get the chance to experience it for yourself.